Hi, everybody. Thanks so much for coming tonight. Okay, this is called The Chance Won't Come Again. And here is the chance that I feel like fell in my lap. I have my debut novel called Blank that came out March 1st. And before I went on the tour, I was determined not to show up to places at which there were only 2 or 3 people. Because when my memoir came out, I definitely had one event where there were only 2 people in the crowd, and then one more person came in, and I was so excited, and it was the videographer. So I wanted to avoid that. So I decided that I would take matters into my own hands and offer myself up to anybody who wanted to host me for anything. For example, at Joe's Pub, I would say yes. Another thing I put on Instagram, and I said, if you would like me to come to your book club or anywhere in the country, I am there. And I meant it. And so one of the replies was, come to Minneapolis. Who here has been to Minneapolis? Oh my gosh, a lot of people. Yeah. Is anyone from Minneapolis? Because this will change my talk. No, I'm kidding. All right, well, I am from New York City, and I must admit I had never been to Minneapolis before. But I had also never been offered a chance to go or had a reason to go. And this was one of those times where I thought, you know what? When is this going to fall into my lap again? One of the women who had been on a couple Zibby retreats that we've thrown, this one to Solvang, California, her name's Susie. She is a fan of everything that we do at Zibby Media and actually showed up to the retreat with all of her nails painted different colors of my logo, including the little girl who was part of my podcast logo for a while. Dedicated. So she said, come visit Minneapolis. I want to show you around. I want to introduce you to everybody. And so on an early Thursday morning at 7:30 a.m., I was in the baggage claim at the Minneapolis-St. Paul airport by myself, wondering what was I doing there. A few minutes later, up rolled Susie and her good friend Andrea, and they were determined to show me a great day in Minneapolis and throw a big event for me, which they guaranteed would have more than 3 people, so I was in. First, we get in the car, and our stop was Mall of America. Who has been to Mall of America? Okay, so you will know, which I did not, how giant the Mall of America is. I know that that's what everybody thinks, but really giant. Like, there are entire roller coasters inside the place with a ceiling. Crazy. And the reason it was so special is another guest from my podcast, whose name is Patrick Robinson, who wrote Laundry Love and House Love. Has anyone read those books? He is the laundry king of Minneapolis. Now you know who it is. I know that was one of the things you were wondering. So the laundry king of Minneapolis has had a store in the Mall of America for many years and decided to let us in before it opened. So next thing you know, I am on a special VIP tour of the closed Mall of America with the celebrity of the whole place. This chance won't come again. So it was totally amusing and interesting, and I got to experience this whole new place that I never would have been on. And the whole time I'm walking around thinking, my gosh, if I hadn't written a book, I would never be here. And that was just the beginning. Susie's husband ended up driving us around all day, and curiously, even though he was the designated driver, and apparently from Minneapolis, he never knew where he was going, and I didn't want to make a big deal about it because I'm very nice, but we kept getting lost everywhere we went, and the navigation systems he seemed very unclear about, and yet was training to be a pilot, which was a little concerning, but that's okay. Anyway, they drove us around. We decided to go on a bookstore tour of Minneapolis, of which there were many. I am a huge bookstore lover. Anybody else love bookstores? Yes? I actually opened my own independent bookstore recently in Santa Monica. So if anybody is there or has been there or whatever, it's on 11th in Montana called Zibby's Bookshop. We curate by emotion. Anyway, I'm a huge bookstore addict. I will go to any bookstore all over the world. So we went to 3, one owned by Louise Erdrich called Birchmark. We went to a kids bookstore, and we went to a new bookstore called Comma, all before landing at a really amazing co-working space called Modern Well. I bet no one's been there. So this is a new space that formed right before the pandemic where everyone could congregate and write, and we all know, aspiring writers, anybody, writers, authors, that it's nice to have a space to learn and get together and all of that. And so in a little room that used to be a converted garage 40 Minneapolis women and I squeezed in with another podcaster where I got to do a whole event and talk about my book Blank, which, by the way, is about a woman named Pippa Jones who can't think of what to write for her second book and decides to hand the book in blank as a commentary on the publishing industry, because does it really even matter what's inside of a book? Isn't it all about marketing that matters? Anyway, that's the book. Get it? Blank? Yeah, Blank, yeah. So she decides to hand it in blank. It turns her whole life upside down, and it's really about her 3 best friends and her troubled marriage and all that. But anyway, that's Blank. I did the event. I met so many people. They were so nice. I know people say that Midwesterners are nice, and actually I have family who's from Ohio, but I have never met nicer people than in Minneapolis. They made me all sorts of gifts. They printed out the book covers, I'm also a publisher, of all the books that we publish, cut them out, scotch taped them around little leftover Hershey's miniatures from Halloween or something, and handed them out with the book covers. How cute is that? You can make that yourself. Anyway, so that was really fun, and everybody was just over the top amazing. And what it taught me is that sometimes when you have preconceived notions of places, I thought Minneapolis was more city-like. Turns out it's flat, beautiful lakes everywhere. I just wouldn't have known. And this whole book writing process and everything that has come from the time I started a podcast in 2018 called Moms Don't Have Time to Read Books till now, everything I have done has been like this trip to Minneapolis. It has been about saying yes to everything. Because when you're trying to build a business or a brand or become an author, you have to go through so much rejection and you have to just try. And so sometimes you end up in situations where you are completely uncomfortable, like perhaps at a big event where you know nobody, in the middle of a new city that you've never been to. But sometimes it leads to lasting friendships, it leads to new ideas, new friends, and all sorts of wonderful connections that I'll have for a long time. I actually now can't wait to go back to Minneapolis. I hope to do so with my next book, although I'm not sure I want Susie's husband flying me there. My next stop is Dallas, so if anybody has tips, I'm going there tomorrow. But the chance won't come again to me means so much about risk, putting yourself out there. I like to write essays where I'm not afraid to talk about the things that scare me, things that might not reflect so positively on me all the time, things that people say maybe we shouldn't talk about. I like to go there, and I like to try to connect with people on an emotional level. I've had a lot of loss in my life, as I'm sure many in the room have had, and one thing that I have learned is life is short, and if you don't try now, when are you going to do it? So that spirit pervades everything. It infuses itself into every situation, into every decision, into every book I read, from which I get so much inspiration and advice all the time. I read nonstop, like I'm sure many of you here. And those are some of the reasons why I feel like the chance that you get to take is a privilege, especially for those who aren't able to get those chances anymore. And so for everybody in this room, not saying you have to go back to Minneapolis, although it was lovely, but let that city be a symbol of when you say yes instead of no, when you take the chance instead of being scared of failure, when you try something that puts you out of your comfort zone and makes you a little cringy and upset, but you realize is the best thing that's ever happened, like perhaps talking for 10 minutes in front of all of you tonight. These things are worth it because this is what makes life worth living. So anyway, the chance worth taking tonight was you. So thanks for having me.